On this episode, we are honored to welcome two remarkable individuals whose dedication to social causes has made a profound impact through their innovative work in film and media. First, we have Noa Urbach, a social entrepreneur who has dedicated her career to addressing climate change and fostering education in various contexts. Born in Tel Aviv, Israel, Noa currently resides in New York City with her family, where she studies global policy at Teachers College, Columbia University. She is the founder of Helpi, a nonprofit micro-volunteering platform, and was a Forbes 30 Under 30 shortlist nominee in 2020. Joining Noa is Rom Barnea, a multidisciplinary cultural entrepreneur based in Tel Aviv. Rom is a producer, photographer, social activist, and curator. He's the co-founder and creative director at Pendulum. He brings a wealth of experience to creating impactful media projects that address social issues. Together, Noa and Rom founded Pendulum, a production company dedicated to creating films, workshops, and campaigns for various communities, including refugees, peace activists, people with special needs, and youth at risk. Their work spans war zones from Ukraine to refugee camps in Greece, using art to elevate marginalized communities and advocate for change. In this fam fireside chat, Noa and Rom will share their experiences working in challenging environments, fostering crises to bring about positive change, and using their creative talents to make powerful statements. Please welcome Noa and Rom.
Welcome, guys. So excited to have you.
Thank you. It's very exciting to be here.
Yeah. So you're in town to premiere this documentary. How'd it go?
Oh my God, it went amazingly. So Return Date Unknown, we've been working on it for more than a year now, since the war in Ukraine started. And in fact, we had our premiere last week. We won our first festival at the Youth Collective Film Festival, which was in Lincoln Center. But I guess one of the pinnacle moments that we've had was to see the director, 17-year-old Timur from Kiev, who flew in for the event. Not only him, but his war journalist father, his brother, came in from the front lines of the war to be in the screening room with us. And, you know, each project that we do has a therapeutic aspect to it. We try to bring healing through the content that we create to the people who create the content, to the people viewing the content. So seeing the film for the first time on the big screen with them that flew in from Ukraine was just, I'm still processing, I think.
Yeah, it was great. I don't have a lot to add. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Johnny, for inviting us. I'll just say, I guess more generally, I come from a social entrepreneurship background, and Om is a filmmaker, and he does photo and video therapy. So really, when we started working together, we kind of joined these two worlds together, and that's what we've been trying to do since. We'll talk more. Yeah.
Definitely want to dig in on the intersection of social entrepreneurship and also filmmaking. But just for the audience, since most of us haven't seen the film yet, we'd love to learn more about the film, what it's about. How did you come about, coming up with the idea for this film?
I think one of the most important elements about events like these is that they help you meet like-minded people and start working on collaborations. And sometimes I get emails which look like spam where I just delete, but I had a meeting that was canceled. And I opened my spam folder, and in that folder was an invitation to an online event, which has similar elements to these. And that's where we met our future partner, Holly Carter, who founded this NGO called By Kids. And they create films for kids, by kids. And immediately after hearing that tagline, I said, those moments where you have an intuition, you see a person, and you're like, I'm going to do something with that person. So that was like that moment. And so we did. We connected with Holly. She said she's doing a season of kid-produced, directed films about climate change. And I told her, well, we have a project about the war in Ukraine where we ask people what meaningful items they took with them as they escaped their homes. Maybe while we're there, we can scout for a kid. And so we did. And we were lucky enough to find Timur who's a charismatic, amazing kid who looks like a film star, who speaks like a film star without ever being in a film.
Timur Slapienko,
Yes,
who's
correct.
the 17-year-old director of this documentary and also the star of the documentary.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea with the series by kids is that the heroes, the protagonists of the films, are also the creators. They are matched with a mentor. In this case, it was Rom, and they created the film together. Timo was a part of every step of the creation of the film, and it was his first filmmaking experience as well. So I think he also enjoyed doing that, and of course telling his story. And it tied perfectly to our mission, which is really to work not just for, but also with the communities and the causes that we care about, because we don't just come and kind of give our whatever thoughts we have on a topic to the communities. It is actually living it, but we try to work with them so that they will create the content, and then they will, by the end of the process, will have not just a product like a film or an exhibition, but also maybe some more tools that they can use in the future and in future projects.
Yeah, maybe speaking to the story of the film. So I met Timur in Germany, where he escaped to, and we kind of did a reversed refugee journey back into Ukraine. We almost got to the border, and the film depicts his journey to meet his dad, which was injured in one of the Russian bombardments. All the while, Timur is meeting fellow teenage refugees, and it examines the effect on how war influences a person his age and their family and their entire country. So he had a lot of weight on his shoulders while creating this film. And it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna air on PBS this fall, but it also will go to more than half the schools in the US, and kids will learn about the war and how it affects kids their age through this film. Right.
83 million.
83 million households, and then over half the schools in America, right? We're correct about that, Maya? Okay.
Yeah. Spending time in Ukraine, scouting for, or you were working on another project while in Ukraine. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. It was called Osobisti Rechi in Ukrainian and Belongings in English. And we've met over 80 people who escaped war. And we asked them, what did you take with you? What one or two objects you chose to bring when you had, sometimes they had 20 minutes to leave their home. And it was a journey there's something very intimate whenever you open a camera in front of a person. And that level of intimacy increases so much when you're talking about working with people who are going through trauma as we speak. And so seeing what these people chose to take with them was fascinating on an anthropological point of view, but it was such a human connection made there. And we managed to raise some funds to the NGOs that we believe in that are helping Ukrainian refugees through that. We had our first exhibit in Jaffa, Tel Aviv, where I'm from, where I live. And yes, shout out to Jaffa.
Tel Aviv.
And we're hoping to reach more venues in the US. We're looking for venues to present this project and to show people how war, and this specific war, is affecting individuals. I think we've all seen Ukraine in the news for more than a year now. We've become, I can say for myself, even though I was there and I work with these people, we become apathic to it. And through this project, we try to convert the apathy into empathy, I think, in most of the projects that we do.
Yeah, one of the most striking images from the project that I've seen is there's a photograph of a Ukrainian woman who decides the object that she wants to take with her is simply a red clown nose. And it's a photo of her with this red clown nose. And the reason she wants to take it with her is to bring a little bit of light, a little bit of airy lightness and silliness to help remind people that, during these heavy, dark times, there's still comedy out there. And that was a really beautiful photo that you shared with me.
Yes, and this woman's name is Mariana, and she chose that clown's nose over taking a bra with her. She only had one plastic bag that she could take with her, along with her kids' belongings, and she chose that because she knew she was going to meet a lot of mothers and children, and that she wanted to make them happy.
That's beautiful. Just, taking a step back, I'm always fascinated by people who have such passion for taking their art and making it something that can impact others. Oftentimes, I know as artists, as creators, the first master we serve, so to speak, is our own creative itch. We make art for ourselves, and then, with so much of what you're doing with the, social impact filmmaking is you're also making art for others. It reminds me of a quote, I help myself to help others, and I help others to help myself. How did you get into social entrepreneurship? How did you get into filmmaking? And at what point did you decide this was the right intersection between these two seemingly disparate worlds?
So Mom and I have been best friends since we were 10. We met at elementary school in Tel Aviv, Jaffa.
Tel Aviv.
I have that soundtrack all the time. Whenever I say Tel Aviv. We grew up in Tel Aviv, went to the same school and became good friends, and then Mom will tell a little bit about his journey in filmmaking. I started a nonprofit in Israel called Helpi. It's a nonprofit online platform for micro-volunteering. Basically, it's an attempt to solve this thing that people who want to volunteer are too busy. And, you kind of try to get to the nonprofit, you call someone, you're like, how am I just going to get to the person that I want to help? And I only have this, 2 hours next week. So that's the platform that kind of connects people with the causes they care about for short-term ad hoc volunteer opportunities. And or never made a connection deeply why I'm doing this work until recently when I'm a master's student in education policy now, and I had to write a bunch of things about my own education. So I, kind of discovered about myself that I think a lot of what my feelings of accountability and responsibility for my community come from my school, the school that we went to together. And it's called the Democratic Open School. It's like a fairly small school where when I was 5 years old, I attended a parliament each week with all the kids, teachers, and parents. We all had an equal vote on schools policies. We had a conflict resolution committee. We were very, very engaged. You couldn't have been not engaged in what was going on. And I think that's kind of where I learned this idea of I'm not alone in the world, and my choices and my decisions come from, they affect other people too.
You guys were the most woke 10-year-olds of all time, right?
Yeah, we started early, no doubt. And I guess Noah's experience in this social sphere, entrepreneurship, thank you. We recognize something that's missing for a lot of grassroots organizations. And you see people doing amazing work, but most of their funds go naturally towards the work. And many, many grassroots organizations do not have a marketing department. They have really bad social media. They don't pay a lot of attention to how they tell people about what it is that they do. And that's kind of our intersection. That is Pendulum in a way. So, yes. Yeah. That's where we raised our first $100 million on that swing. Yeah. But yeah, I guess to me, it started in the army. In Israel, we all have to go through army service. I was like, I'm going to go to the army film unit, or I'm not going to do any other job. Put me in jail. I don't care. And they loved that approach. And I went straight into the film unit. And while I was there, there was one of many wars in Gaza. And they sent us to document what was going on. I had a boom mic, so I can say I did sound during war. And I just saw how storytelling, filmmaking can be used to create propaganda which perpetuates a state of dehumanizing others, of destruction, basically. So it really took me off the filmmaking world for a few good years after that. And then I think somewhere in our meeting, it sparked this old love that I had since I'm 10 to filmmaking. And I thought, okay, if it can be used like we see every day in the world to create this dehumanization, this destruction that we see all around us, this polycrisis that we're experiencing everywhere, let's try and do that to the furthest opposite we can, basically, if that makes sense.
That's awesome. So many of for so many of us in the audience, we're at the beginning stages of our careers. You guys, our careers as creators. You guys, from a very early age, had an inkling of what you wanted to do. But I'm curious, what was your first break? What was the thing that allowed you to be able to say, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do"? Did you start by starting Pendulum? Did you start by starting another film, and then did it become Pendulum? I'm curious, just for so many of us in the audience who, we're still searching for our first break to really pursue our creative pursuits. What was it for you guys?
I'll let you respond. I'll just say it's. I didn't know that what I was going to do at all. This was definitely a joke, the playground joke. No. I thought I was going to do it. My dream was to be a high school principal.
I didn't know that, actually.
Education, but yeah.
It happened, I think, in 2016 in the refugee camps in Greece, on the border with Greece and Turkey. Went to volunteer, saw there were many volunteers. And so they had food, medicine, all the essentials covered. The more therapeutic aspect, the more artistic aspect of these people that came from Syria, from Afghanistan, Iraq, you name it, was not addressed. And so came back again with disposable cameras. That was like the first project, showing, we spoke about this before, showing what it's like to be a refugee through the eyes of a refugee. And that has created some traction, and I think we recognized there's a need for such projects. And that was it.
I was doing Helpi, and I was working as a nonprofit with a lot of nonprofits, seeing how much all these skills of branding, PR, marketing, all those things are really lacking in the world of, good social justice work. Like all the people who are trying to do really, really good things and don't have the money, obviously, but also then, where do you cut on expenses where it feels like fat, which is a lot of times marketing, which obviously, it's crucial. And then it was in the pandemic that we were hanging out in your living room, and the two worlds, these two experiences kind of came to be, this idea of bringing those skills to this world of doing.
And then we had an idea to create a system, an educational system, if you will, of creating these story ambassadors within the communities that we care for. And, we talked about 3 wars by now, right? We talked about the war in Ukraine. We talked about the refugee crisis in Greece. But what's most immediate for us is the war that we've been living with all our lives, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so we wanted to create this Story Ambassadors Academy, not a catchy name, that will deal with our conflict and that will take people from organizations working towards peace building. And then the right client came along, right? Then we worked with Alliance for Middle East Peace, and we've been working with them ever since about training people from these organizations. They don't have the funds to tell their own stories, just to take up a smartphone and create authentic content through their eyes without needing a company like us. So it's not the best business model out there, but it's very fulfilling, and we teach people how to not need us.
That's awesome. So much of your career has seemed to triangulate around shining a light on the plight of refugees, versus say, climate change or other potential social causes. What is it exactly about that story, that issue, that drew you to go to a refugee camp in Greece, that drew you to go to Ukraine, that drew you to create this film, Return Date Unknown?
I think it's more of living in this war-torn country of ours. And whenever you speak to someone and you say, oh, I'm from Israel, I say, oh, wow, is it really dangerous there? Is there any solution inside? It's just a conversation that doesn't really lead to a solution, no matter if you're speaking to policymakers or artists, whoever it may be. So I can speak for myself and say that dealing with people who are in different war zones, including our own, has been a chance to have that conversation going and see what not solutions that will be a silver bullet to it all, but will solve it for specific individuals and create healing in their lives, in their activism. And I think in every workshop that we give about activistic storytelling, there's this element that we like to implement, which is if you're Greta Thunberg and you're going against climate crisis, climate change, there's so much up against you. And what we try to teach is that we look at social movements that manage to create change. And we see that where there's more success is by if you as an activist have a more sustainable approach towards what you're trying to target and what you're trying to achieve. So it's not about solving this wish of mine or of ours to solve this whole war or all these wars, but it's about what I can solve personally. And through that, we usually find the good stories. Through that, people find their personal mission, and that keeps it going.
That's beautiful. So much of the way I think can conceptualize what you're doing is using your artistic medium as a way to develop empathy, or as a way to help others develop empathy for different groups. Some of the things that you shared with me not too recently is what's beyond filmmaking and what are the next mediums that you're working on next to help create empathy for people. I'm curious if you want to share what you guys are up to next.
Yeah, very excited to share what we're working on now. So it is a VR experience. We're moving to the next. We're going to the future anymore. It's right here. It's a VR experience that brings together people from both sides of the wall, the actual wall between Palestine and Israel. It's called People to People. It's based on this very well-established idea that at least our war or our peace won't come. It doesn't look like it's going to come from, the people that are supposed to be taking care of it, but maybe from creating actual connection and relationships between the people. And the virtual space is where, for most of us, is the only space that we can meet a person from the other side. Like, we can't even go to, we can't cross the borders. Where some of you might be able to go to the two places to meet both people. But for us, the people who actually need to create these relationships, we can't. So the VR experience is something that we have done a pilot already of 8 short films. they follow individuals on both sides. And you basically get to spend a few minutes in their world, in their shoes, with their kids, with their families, with their market and school and roads and whatever they have or don't have. There is also research that was already done on this pilot program.
And it works. It works.
And the research shows it actually works. So Dr. Beatrice Hassler from the Virtual Reality Lab of Conflict Resolution looked at people watching these VR experiences, and she saw they tested for emotions and feelings and attitudes towards peace promoting policies. So let's say access to roads on the Palestinian side, and just feelings toward the protagonist in the story. And they saw that it actually makes a difference. People come out differently from after watching the VR, and they saw that it makes a difference if they watch it on a screen or in the VR set. So it's much more powerful when you're actually immersed in this experience. And there are 20 more films that are in production. We're still fundraising for that. And that's what we actually have a tiny trailer to show. We can now or later. Yeah. Pull it up.
While this thing loads, I'm curious, how did this idea come about to use VR as a storytelling tool?
Well, this idea actually came to us from the director of this. We're the producers of this project now. Director Fabian Vettel from Bavaria, Germany. This was his thesis work on using VR as an empathy machine, as a way to create an educational tool for peace building. And so the 8 films that Noah spoke about were his first endeavor into that, and that's where we came in. And now, we're raising for the next 20. I think now we live in very polarized times. You feel it here in the States, we feel it in Israel. It's becoming more and more extreme. And no thanks to social media, of course. And so we were really thirsty, if I can say that in English, to see tools which break down walls. And this turned out to be a very potent one.
That's awesome. So let's see if we can get this to stream.
So I'll just quickly say the plan is to create 20 more of these and then to distribute them in a physical roadshow in schools in Israel and Palestine, in universities, and in film festivals.
And what sort of VR headsets are you giving? Are you giving folks VR headsets, or how does that?
So the idea for distribution is on 2 fronts. One is through VR headsets, and the other is through VR domes. Domes. So
wow.
It's if you haven't experienced it, look for your VR domes near me on Google Maps. Not gonna find anything, but if 2 years from now, yes. But it's so cool.
All right. I think I have it.
This is the project.
It's so real.
The 20 people are somewhere in there. You need to imagine them. But they're there.
Can everyone see this okay? The backup option is I will hold the phone like this. Let's see. Should stream in a minute.
So part of every good storytelling is building up tension, suspense. So we planned for a 17-minute of this buffering.
This is the film.
Yes.
Let's try this.
That's it.
Soldiers were standing on the checkpoints, who were searching my people, searching my family.
Start from the top. Start from the top. It's a big file. You know what they say about big files.
I mean, we can just keep the Pendulum logo and keep talking if no? Last time.
What everyone else has been doing.
So while we get this to load, which will be in the next 20 minutes, we're gonna do a short Q&A. I'm gonna grab a mic. Where's that fourth mic? And then we're gonna toss this mic around. Yep, here we go. And then apologies if your question gets cut off during the trailer. We're gonna. But yeah, any questions from our audience? Yes.
Hi, Dasha. I had a question about, I guess, how long did you spend in Ukraine for the duration of the project? And did you meet any other children, teenagers that had interesting stories or you considered instead of Timor?
Yeah. Well, most of the time was spent outside of Ukraine because we mostly work with people who escaped it. So, and we scouted for quite a bit. And I would say that we ran across, I think, a few dozen kids that we interviewed, both for the Belongings Project, seeing what they took with them, and for the film project. And one kid that really that really stayed with me. The story was Ilyusha. He was 7 years old from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. And he was just the sweetest kid that I could really see how, during the time that we've had with him, he really changed from being super shy, not smiling, super suspicious of us and our reason for coming there and talking to him. Oh my God.
It works.
So this kid, so that was that. We can come back to that in a second. I'll just finish what I started to say. So I studied, besides filmmaking, photo and video therapy. And in that kid, I could see a phototherapeutic process going in just the 30 minutes that I've had with him. So as I said, he started off very shy, very closed, not smiling, very suspicious of why we came there to interview him and his mom, which makes total sense, as he was just a week ago in the war zone. And I gave him the camera to play around with and see if he wants to show us something. And from his backpack, he took his belongings for the project, what he brought with him, and he started taking picture of that. And what was the object? It was a notebook that he made full of games that he created for himself, taking cereal boxes, things he found on the road, sticking some leaves with duct tape on it, and so he could have something to play with his mom and with people that he met or will meet in his journey. And seeing him take pictures like that, starting to smile again and trusting us was a very beautiful moment to witness. Yeah.
That's awesome. Any other questions? Gentleman back right there. I think it's you, David. Gentleman named David.
I think one of the challenges for me with many art forms creating impact is the ephemeral nature of the art. The ephemeral nature that it's transitory. It's a moment where people experience something and then it's gone and then you go back to default reality. Film and video is especially one of those art forms I find challenging because you watch the video and then you go back to your life. So I guess the question is, how do you see the art form within film and video creating more long-lasting impact? And if empathy is the goal, like, where do you see pushing that forward? Like, how does that happen? Sorry for the big question.
Big questions require big answers.
We present ourselves as impact production company and creative agency for social causes. So when it comes to PME, planning, monitoring, and evaluating what we do and what kind of impact it has, there are the statistics, like how many people clicked on the video, how many people donated, how many people volunteered, came to a rally, demonstrations, and all that. And I feel like there's no glass ceiling to what you can inspire in terms of how to create that impact and how to keep people engaged with your cause. And it can be, personally, if I can be exposed for a second, I would say it's very frustrating to look at those statistics because it's never feel like you got people's attention enough time, like did I really change that kid's life that I just mentioned, or was this just a meaningful experience for me? And so a mutual friend of ours once told me, he's an artist, I was feeling this frustration and I expressed it to him, like, how could I know that we're creating any impact? And he said, you can't really know, can you? I said, what? What do you mean? I can, it's in the statistics. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, well, someone's coming to your art show or to your movie screening or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be a cathartic moment that you see happening in real time. It can be a long-lasting thing just because 20 years from now, that person's going to remember what you did and it will affect their lives. So that kind of gave me hope. So I try to remember that, even if in this talk tonight.
We have time for 2 more questions. I see you raising your hand.
Hi, I'm John. I've been a climate activist for 10 years now. I really appreciate that you guys are doing your impact in space. And it's interesting that you're working and moving into VR now. So my question is, I recently saw the movie How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which is based on a nonfiction book, but it's a fictional story. And I just found it so much more interesting knowing that it was fictional. And because the climate space, if you're talking about social causes that need a PR facelift, I think the climate space needs a big one right now, because I feel like this movement that I've helped build for 10 years is losing control of the narrative with potentially really disruptive consequences. And I think it's because people, when they think about engaging with climate change, think about having to watch like a documentary or a lot of documentaries to fully understand it, and the emotional labor that entails, and they just don't want to engage. And it sounds like you guys exclusively work in the nonfiction space, and I'm just curious if you have an opinion whether nonfiction is somehow more effective in eliciting empathy than a fictional narrative, or if this just happens to be the space that you personally work in, and there's no better or worse. I'm just curious what you have to say.
So before I doing the master's in went back to school in education again, and actually focused on climate change education, and that's like the worst space to be in, as you said, in terms of not only are you trying to make a difference, not only are we in this, incredible downslope. I'm working in a space where we're also trying to do this with kids, and the mental health aspect is important. It's really important. We talk about while we're trying to change attitudes and behaviors, raise awareness. We have to take care of ourselves and the people we plan our policies of curriculum to actually experience them, have to think of their mental health. And we talk a lot about, climate distress and climate anxiety and all those things. I think where this long exposition relates to your question and to our work is when we get to work with actual people and not stories, there comes the therapy aspect. And I think that's how we try to kind of tackle that. I think, you can tell a story in many different ways, right? You can tell a story with made up characters or with real stories. I think where we kind of find our strength is where, because we create with the communities.
Too hard, too fast. Just walking up to people that just, their boat landed a couple days prior and asking, so what it's like for you to be a refugee? What is home for you? What is the future for you? Tell me everything. That's what pushed me towards studying video and phototherapy, and also trauma, first aid trauma therapy. So take all 3 courses and you'll be fine. In the process of working with Timur, the kid director of Return Date Unknown, I saw him go through something that I think most of us can relate, which is an imposter syndrome. So I think that all across the project that I was fortunate enough to work with, I saw that syndrome in me and in the people that we've documented. So I would start by maybe addressing that and not putting too much weight on your subject's shoulders too fast, too hard.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing everything with us. Give it